They told me I didn't have to do this. The public defender warned me 3 times. Anything you say can make your situation worse, Daniel. But worse how, exactly? They gave me 45 years. I'm 47. I'll die here. That's my reality. So silence doesn't make sense anymore. Not when nobody truly understood what happened. Not when everyone painted me as a monster, when I was only trying to protect the one thing that mattered in my life. My name is Daniel Michael Harper. The media called me the Guardian of Sycamore Street, with that mocking tone they use when they want to turn you into a spectacle. I was convicted of aggravated kidnapping, prolonged unlawful detention, aggravated domestic violence, and a bunch of other charges my lawyer enumerated during 3 days of trial. The victim was my wife, Sarah Harper, the person I loved most in this world, the person I almost destroyed trying to save. That's what nobody understands, that everything I did, every decision, every action, was out of love. Sick love, you'll say. Toxic love. Obsessive, pathological. The psychiatrists who evaluated me used all those words. Dependent personality disorder, delusional jealousy, pathological need for control, as if putting labels on what I felt made it less real. But let me start from the beginning, because to understand what happened in that house in Dayton for 2 years and 4 months, you need to understand who I was, who Sarah and I were. I was born in Dayton in 1978, working-class family. My father worked at an auto parts factory. My mother was a cashier at Kroger. Only child. Lonely childhood, but not traumatic. I was never popular in school. Too quiet, too anxious. But I wasn't an outcast. Just invisible. I always had that feeling of watching life from the outside, like through a window. I met Sarah in 2003. I was 25. She was 23. We worked at the same logistics company, me in accounting, her in customer service. I saw her in the break room on some random Tuesday, and something in me just clicked. Like finally someone saw me, noticed me. It took me 3 months to gather the courage to ask her for coffee. To my surprise, she said yes, and then she kept saying yes. To dinners, to movies, to meeting my mother. We got married in 2005, small ceremony at a Methodist church. We bought a modest house on Sycamore Street, 2 bedrooms, a small backyard. She talked about filling those bedrooms with children. I nodded, smiled, but inside I felt panic, because even then, somewhere deep, I knew the truth. Sarah was all I had, and children would mean sharing her. The first years were good, or at least that's what I tell myself. Sarah worked, I worked, dinners together, weekends watching Netflix. Nothing extraordinary, but for me it was perfect. It was enough. She was enough. More than enough. She was everything. The problem started when she wanted more. More friendships, more outings, more life outside our house. Around 2009, she started meeting with work friends on Fridays. Happy hours, girls' nights. I told her it was fine, that she should have fun, but inside, it ate at me. Who were these friends? What did they talk about? Did they talk about me? Did they laugh about our marriage? I started asking questions, casual at first. How was it? Who went? What did you talk about? She answered patiently, but over time I noticed something in her tone. A small exasperation, like my questions were a burden. In 2011, we tried to have children. She wanted to. I pretended to want to, but nothing happened. Months turned into a year, then 2. She suggested we get tested. I postponed it, made excuses, because deep down, I knew a child would change everything. It wouldn't be just the 2 of us anymore. I wouldn't be her priority anymore. The fights started around 2013. Small at first. She said I was suffocating, that she needed space, that I couldn't Ask her where she was every hour of the day. But how could I not ask? We were married. Married couples are supposed to share everything, tell each other everything. Or did she have something to hide? I started checking her phone, only when she was showering or sleeping. I didn't find anything, but that didn't calm me. It meant she was careful, that she knew how to delete the messages, the calls, the evidence. I suggested she quit her job, told her I made enough for both of us, that she could focus on the house, on us. She refused, said she loved her work, that she wasn't going to give up her independence. That word, independence, hurt more than any insult. Independence from what? From me? The outings with friends became more frequent. Fridays, some Saturdays. Once she went to a weekend retreat with work colleagues. I spent those 3 days in agony, not sleeping, calling her every 2 hours. She stopped answering after the 10th message. When she came back, I asked. Questions. Many questions. She yelled at me for the first time, told me I was sick, that I needed help. Maybe she was right. But how could I seek help when the problem was that I was losing her? A therapist couldn't fix that. Nobody could fix that my wife no longer loved me the way I loved her. In 2016, I started following her. Not all the time, just occasionally. When she said she was going to Target but took 3 hours. When she said she had a work meeting on a Saturday. I'd follow in my car, keeping distance. Most times, she went exactly where she said. But once I saw her having coffee with a man, a co-worker, she told me later. Just a friend. But men and women aren't just friends. That's what people don't want to admit. There's always something more. Attraction, possibility, hidden desire. That man made her laugh in a way I couldn't anymore. I saw it, the way she leaned forward, the way she touched his arm. When I confronted her, she denied everything, told me I was paranoid, that I needed professional help, that if I didn't seek therapy, she would leave. I agreed to go. I went to 3 sessions with a therapist who smelled like sandalwood and nodded condescendingly at everything I said. He prescribed me anti-anxiety medication. I took it for a week. It made me feel numb, empty, and the emptiness was worse than the anxiety. At least anxiety meant I still cared, that I was still fighting for us. Things came to a breaking point in March 2022. Sarah came home and told me we needed to talk. Those 4 words, the prelude to every ending. She sat on the living room couch, our couch, where we'd watched 1,000 movies, and told me she couldn't do it anymore. That she loved me, but this wasn't love. It was prison. That I needed to seek real help, or she would have to leave. I listened in silence, and then with complete calm, I told her I understood, that I would seek help, that I would change. But that night, while she slept, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking, calculating, and I came to a simple conclusion. If Sarah left, I would cease to exist. Not metaphorically, literally. My entire identity was built around being her husband. Without her, I was nobody. So I made a decision that even now, I'm not completely sure I regret. I decided Sarah would stay, not because she wanted to, but because I needed her to. The next day, while she was at work, I changed the locks. I installed additional deadbolts on all the doors, deadbolts that only opened from the outside. I covered the basement windows with plywood from the exterior. I moved our bed down to the basement. I brought down her clothes, toiletries, books. I made the space as comfortable as possible. When Sarah came home that night, I was waiting in the kitchen. I told her we needed to talk. She let her guard down, probably thought I was going to apologize, promise real change. I guided her to the basement, under the pretense of showing her something. When she went down the stairs, I closed the door behind us. She heard the bolt. She turned. I saw the fear in her eyes. I explained calmly that this was temporary, that we just needed time together, without distractions, to fix our marriage, that the outside world was the problem, her friendships, her work, all those influences pulling her away from me, that here, together, we could go back to being who we were. She screamed, cried, begged me, tried to run up the stairs, pound on the door. I stood on the other side, listening, heartbroken, because I didn't want her to suffer. I never wanted that. I just wanted her to understand that this was for our own good. The first days were the worst. She barely ate, screamed for hours. I brought her food 3 times a day. I talked to her through the door, explaining over and over that this was love, protection, that outside was the danger, the men who wanted to take her from me, the friends who filled her head with ideas about independence and freedom. After a week, the screaming turned to silence, silence that was somehow worse. I started spending more time in the basement with her. At first, she'd huddle in a corner, avoiding my gaze. But gradually, very gradually, she started talking to me. Practical questions at first. How long this would last. If she could at least call her mother to tell her she was okay. I told her that her mother thought Sarah had quit her job and gone on a trip to clear her mind. That I'd been sending messages from her phone. That everything was under control. Weeks turned into months. We established routines. I worked from home now. I'd told my employer I had to care for my sick wife. We'd have breakfast together in the basement. I'd bring her books, magazines, puzzles. We watched movies on a laptop, played cards, had conversations. And in those conversations, sometimes, just sometimes, I saw glimpses of the Sarah I'd met. The one who laughed at my bad jokes. The one who rested her head on my shoulder. Of course, I knew she was acting, surviving, but I let myself believe, because believing was the only thing keeping me sane. There were violent moments, times when she tried to attack me, with a plate, with a lamp. I never hit her back the way the prosecutor suggested. I only restrained her, contained her, explained that I understood her frustration, but that this would pass, that soon she'd see I was right. 6 months passed, then a year. Sarah stopped actively resisting. She ate, slept, read, talked to me about the movies we watched. She never said she loved me, not after the first few months. But there was an acceptance, or so I wanted to believe. I promised her that when our marriage was fixed, when she understood that I only wanted to protect her, we could return to normal life, a life where she would choose to stay with me. Not because she was locked up, but because she'd finally understand that we were one. But something changed in the 2nd year. Sarah became different, quieter, more distant. She stopped looking me in the eye, stopped eating some days. I begged her to eat, to talk to me. But she just sat there, staring at the wall. It terrified me, because I realized I was losing her in a more permanent way than if she'd left. She was there, physically, but she was fading, becoming a ghost. I tried to make her react. I bought her favorite chocolates, played her favorite music, begged her to yell at me, hit me, anything but that silence. But nothing worked. It was in October 2024 when it all ended. I made a mistake, a stupid one. I went down to the basement with her food and forgot to fully close the bolt. I was distracted, worried about how distant she'd become. Sarah waited until I went back upstairs. And then she ran. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, the front door opening. I ran after her, but it was too late. She ran out, screaming into the street. The neighbors, those neighbors who for 2 years and 4 months thought Sarah had simply left, came out of their houses. They saw my wife, emaciated, barefoot, crying, screaming that I'd kept her locked up. They called the police. I didn't run. There was no point. I stayed in the living room, waiting, knowing it was all over. I was arrested that night. The charges were endless. Aggravated kidnapping, prolonged unlawful detention, aggravated domestic violence, coercion, psychological abuse. The prosecutor painted me as a monster, a psychopath, a predator. My lawyer tried to argue mental illness, that I wasn't competent, that I needed treatment, not prison. But the psychiatrists who evaluated me said I knew exactly what I was doing, that I understood it was wrong. I simply didn't care. And they're right. I knew it was wrong, but I also knew that losing Sarah was worse. So I chose. I chose the lesser evil. Or at least that's what I told myself. Sarah testified at the trial. I hadn't seen her in months. She looked different, thinner, shorter hair. But what struck me most was her gaze. She looked at me without emotion, like I was a stranger, like the 19 years we spent together, the good years before the basement, had never existed. She described the confinement in a monotone voice, the hours alone, the terror, the hopelessness, how she stopped believing anyone would find her, how she planned to kill herself several times but didn't, because she knew it would destroy me, and she didn't want to give me that satisfaction. Hearing her was devastating, because until that moment, some part of me still believed she would understand someday. That she'd see it was all out of love. But on that witness stand, with that empty voice, I knew the truth. I had destroyed her. The person I loved most in the world, I had turned into a shell. The jury deliberated 3 hours, guilty on all counts. The judge gave me 45 years. With good behavior, I could get out at 75. But Sarah requested and obtained a permanent restraining order. I can never contact her, never write to her, never try to see her. So here I am, in this cell, for the rest of my useful life. And the question everyone asks is, do I regret it? The honest answer is, I don't know. I regret hurting her. I regret taking 2 years of her life. I regret that she hates me. But do I regret trying to save our marriage? Do I regret fighting for the only thing that mattered to me? I'm not sure. The other inmates avoid me. Even here there are moral hierarchies. The thieves and dealers look at me with contempt. Wife beater, they mutter. But they don't understand. I never beat her. Not really. I just held her, protected her, from a world that wanted to separate us. I spend my days reading, exercising, thinking about Sarah. I wonder where she is, if she resumed her life, if she met someone else. The idea destroys me, but also, I understand it. She's 43 years old. She deserves to be happy. I just wish that happiness could have been with me. The psychiatrists who visit me here insist I acknowledge that what I did was abuse, control, violence. They use all those clinical words, but none of those words capture the complete truth. That I was desperate, that I was terrified of losing her, that my love, sick, toxic, pathological, was real. Does that justify it? No, never. But it explains it. If I could speak to Sarah one last time, I wouldn't apologize. Apologies are empty after what I did. I would only tell her this, that I'm sorry my love was so small, so fearful, so selfish, that she deserved a love that gave her wings, not one that built her cages. But I wasn't capable of that love, and that's my true sentence. Not these 45 years, but knowing that the only person I loved, I destroyed, and that I'll spend the rest of my life in a cell I built long before they arrested me. A cell made of fear and need and control. Sarah is free now, truly free, and I never will be. Even if someday I get out of this prison, I'll still be a prisoner of what I did, of who I am. The guards tell me I have to finish, that my time is up. That's fine. There's not much more to say. I'm Daniel Michael Harper, The Guardian of Sycamore Street, 45 years sentenced, and a lifetime of regret I don't know how to feel correctly. That's my confession. Complete. Unfiltered. The truth of a man who loved too wrongly. And now, like Sarah, I'm alone.